Long before tulip fields, bustling canals and windmills defined its landscape, the Netherlands was little more than a low, marshy frontier, a precarious stretch of land carved between sea and river. It was here, in a country whose very existence depended on human ingenuity against water, that small communities of traders, farmers, and fishermen laid down the first stones of a nation. From these humble beginnings, the Dutch would rise to command oceans, pioneer global commerce, and foster an age of art and philosophy that lit up the world. The story of the Netherlands is one of resilience and reinvention, a people who transformed a fragile corner of Europe into one of history's most dynamic societies. The territory of modern Netherlands was inhabited by hunter-gatherers even during the Ice Age. As glaciers retreated after 10,000 BC, the Swifterband culture lived along rivers and lakes, eventually adopting pottery and animal husbandry. By around 4000 BC, the funnel-beaker farming culture had spread into the region, and later the corded ware and Bronze Age cultures followed. With the Iron Age came tribal societies in the north and Celtic-influenced peoples in the south. In the 1st century BC, Rome expanded north of the Alps. Julius Caesar's conquest annexed what is now the southern Netherlands as part of his Gallic campaigns. The Romans organized provinces and recruited local tribes into the army. During Roman rule, a notable revolt was the Batavian Rebellion led by Gaius Julius Civilis, which briefly drove Roman garrisons from the Rhine frontier. Though crushed, such events left a legacy. 17th-18th century Dutch nationalists celebrated the Batavi as forefathers, even naming colonial Jakarta Batavia. By the 4th-5th centuries AD, Roman authority collapsed. Germanic Franks, Frisians, and Saxons filled the vacuum and laid the foundations for the medieval Netherlands. After Rome's retreat, mass migrations transformed the region. Around the 5th-6th centuries, Franks moved in from the south, and Saxons, Angles, and Jutes from the east. Many Angles and Jutes crossed to Britain, but those who stayed in the Low Countries became known as Frisians. By the 6th-7th century, the Frisian realm, sometimes called Frisia Magna, extended along the North Sea coast into modern Holland, with its most powerful kings, Aldegisel and Redbad, centered at Utrecht. Dorestad became a major trading emporium in the 7th-8th centuries, reflecting Frisian and Frankish rivalry. In the south, the Salian Franks consolidated power. Clovis, the first united Frankish territories west of the Meuse, including the southern Netherlands, and expanded into Gaul. His Merovingian successors fragmented and reunited the realm, but by the 8th century, the Carolingian dynasty was ascendant. Charlemagne, crowned 800 AD, incorporated the Dutch lands into his empire, with Nijmegen and Liège as frequent imperial residences. After Charlemagne's death, the 843 Treaty of Verdun placed the Netherlands in Middle Francia, and the 870 Treaty of Meersen then split it, leaving most of the region under East Francia, the future Holy Roman Empire. Viking raids in the 9th-10th centuries harassed the coasts and river towns, but local lords and later German emperors gradually established control. During the High and Late Middle Ages, the Low Countries were part of the Holy Roman Empire in theory, but in practice highly feudal and fragmented. Numerous counties and duchies and autonomous regions, Friesland in the north, existed side by side. The emperor had little direct power. Local counts and bishops often acted as de facto sovereigns. Frequent warfare between them was common. For example, the Counts of Holland and Dukes of Gelre fought repeatedly over control of Utrecht and the Rhine-Meuse delta. The County of Holland gradually emerged as the most powerful state. Originally granted to the Viking Rorik in 862, Holland expanded under his successors. By the early 11th century, Holland's Count Dirk III was rich enough to levy tolls on river traffic. The name Holland first appears in documents in 1083. Over the next 2 centuries, the Counts of Holland conquered Zeeland and subdued West Frisia. Notably, Count Floris V finally defeated the remaining Frisian resistance in 1289. Meanwhile, the rest of the country developed. From about 1000, an agricultural revolution, new plows, draining wetlands with dikes, greatly raised productivity and population. Medieval Dutch towns thrived on trade. Culturally, the region began to develop a distinct identity, but politically, it remained a mosaic of principalities under the loose umbrella of the empire. In the 15th century, many of the Dutch and Flemish fiefs were brought together. Through inheritance and conquest, the Dukes of Burgundy amassed control of much of the Low Countries. Philip the Good of Burgundy, for example, united Holland, Zeeland, Brabant, Flanders, and other territories under his rule. Under Burgundian rule, trade and cities flourished. Antwerp and Amsterdam became major ports, and a grain trade with the Baltic fed the growing population. The dukes protected merchant interests and invested in infrastructure. By the early 16th century, the Habsburgs inherited the Burgundian lands. Charles V, grandson of Mary of Burgundy, expanded the territory into the 17 provinces. He formally annexed Utrecht, Groningen, Guelders, and other regions. Now, the Netherlands in the north and Belgium in the south were ruled by Charles as parts of his Burgundian Habsburg Empire, with Brussels, Mechelen, or Antwerp as chief assemblies. Under Charles's successors, the provinces kept their own laws and estates, but Spanish centralization efforts caused friction. Spanish officials often ignored local rights, and harsh enforcement of Catholic orthodoxy after 1560 alarmed the Protestant middle class. This began an anti-Spanish nationalism. Resentment of Madrid's taxes and troops helped spark the Dutch Revolt. In 1568, the Dutch Revolt became open war. William I, the Silent of Orange, led the Dutch in revolt against King Philip II's rule. The conflict, often called the 80 Years' War, pitted Protestant northern provinces against Catholic Spain. Early on, brutal sieges and atrocities were common. The Spanish crushed Middelburg, massacred the citizens of Zutphen and Naarden, and laid waste to Haarlem. These horrors intensified hatred of the invader. In 1579, the northern rebel provinces formed the Union of Utrecht, effectively allying for defense, and in 1581 they signed the Act of Abjuration, formally declaring independence from Spain. Meanwhile, Spanish forces under Parma's Duke Alexander Farnese reconquered much of the south and re-Catholicized what is today Belgium. Many Dutch-speaking Catholics fled north, swelling the Dutch Republic's population. By the mid-1600s, only the 7 northern provinces remained free of Spain. The Long War finally ended with the 1648 Peace of Westphalia. Spain recognized the Republic of the Seven United Netherlands as an independent state. After independence, the new Dutch Republic would maintain a policy of religious toleration for Protestants, Catholics, and Jews, and a decentralized government for decades to come. The 17th century was the golden age of the United Provinces. During this era, Dutch trade, seafaring, and culture reached global preeminence. The Dutch East India Company and West India Company established far-flung colonies and trading posts in Asia, Africa, and the Americas. Dutch sailors controlled spice routes and dominated the Atlantic slave trade. Amsterdam became Europe's financial hub, issuing the first stock shares, and the Dutch merchant marine was the world's largest. In the arts and sciences, the Netherlands also excelled. Painters such as Rembrandt, Vermeer, Frans Hals, and others produced masterpieces, while writers and philosophers had a wide influence. Advances in science, Huygens in physics, Leeuwenhoek in microbiology, flourished under patronage. By the mid-1600s, the population of the Republic stood over 2 million, and urban life buzzed with commerce, intellectual debate, and a relatively free press. However, by the late 17th century, Dutch power began to wane. Military conflicts, the Anglo-Dutch Wars and wars against France, drained resources. In 1672, the Rampjar, the Republic was invaded simultaneously by France, England, and others, forcing it to cede territory and seek peace. After 1672, the Dutch focus shifted gradually inward. Competition from England and France, alongside internal political strife between merchant regents and the stadtholder, meant the Golden Age ended, even as its cultural legacy endured. The 18th century saw the Netherlands decline into relative stagnation. The Republic fought one last war and sank into political crisis. Economic growth slowed as industrial rivals outpaced it. Domestically, a patriot movement of bourgeois reformers challenged the hereditary stadtholder and demanded democratic reforms. The turmoil culminated in 1795 when revolutionary France invaded. The Orangist regime fled and the old republic ended. Under French influence, the Netherlands became the Batavian Republic, a client state modeled on revolutionary France. It was a more centralized, unitary state and introduced modern reforms like Napoleonic law. In 1806, Napoleon created the Kingdom of Holland for his brother Louis Bonaparte. Louis was a popular king, but Napoleon grew impatient and in 1810 annexed the Netherlands outright into the French Empire. French rule imposed heavy taxes and conscription, which caused hardship among the Dutch. By 1813, with Napoleon defeated, French troops retreated. After 1813, the Dutch re-established a monarchy. A provisional government invited William Frederick back. In 1815, under the guidance of the great powers at Vienna, William became King William I of the newly created United Kingdom of the Netherlands. This kingdom united the northern Netherlands with the former Austrian Netherlands, roughly modern Belgium, and Luxembourg, serving as a buffer against France. The new state had two capitals, Amsterdam and Brussels, and different religions, Protestant North, Catholic South. Cultural and economic differences between North and South were deep. Dutch was made the official language, favoring Northerners, while the South was industrializing under a French-speaking elite. In 1830, a revolt broke out in Brussels, and by 1831, Belgium declared independence. After diplomatic negotiations, the 1839 Treaty of London confirmed Belgian secession, dividing Luxembourg and Limburg. The Kingdom of the Netherlands henceforth consisted only of the 11 northern provinces. Domestically, King William I and his successors gradually liberalized. In 1848, amid a wave of European revolutions, William II agreed to a new constitution drafted by liberal Johann Rudolf Thorbecke. This charter transformed the monarchy into a constitutional monarchy. The king retained head of state status, but real power shifted to an elected parliament, and civil liberties were enshrined. This constitution, with later amendments, still forms the basis of Dutch government. Economically, the 19th century saw slow industrial growth. The government built railways and modernized finance, but Holland's economy remained heavily trade-oriented. By 1850 to 1900, sectors like textiles, shipbuilding, and later electronics grew, and Rotterdam expanded as a major port. Meanwhile, society remained pillarized along religious lines, but political liberalism steadily advanced under leaders like Thorbecke. During World War I, the Netherlands maintained official neutrality. The country avoided military involvement, but its economy and society were strained by wartime blockades and refugee flows. There were shortages and strikes, and a brief socialist uprising, the Red Week of November 1918, was quickly suppressed. Social reforms came after the war. Women gained the vote in 1919, and the Netherlands reorganized its military defenses. World War II brought far greater calamity. In May 1940, Nazi Germany invaded and swiftly occupied the country. The city of Rotterdam was largely destroyed by bombing, with thousands killed in the infamous Rotterdam Blitz. The German occupation, 1940-1945, imposed harsh measures. The persecution and deportation of Dutch Jews and other minorities, forced labor, and repression of dissent. The Dutch resistance mounted sabotage and a clandestine press, while the hunger winter of 1944-45 inflicted famine on the densely occupied western provinces. The Netherlands was liberated by Allied forces in the spring of 1945. Recovery began immediately after. The government prosecuted collaborators, rebuilt cities, and sought foreign aid. After 1945, the Netherlands launched a massive recovery effort. U.S. Marshall Plan aid, from 1948, helped rebuild infrastructure and revive industry. In 1949, the Netherlands gave up its long-standing neutrality by joining NATO, and in 1957 became a founding member of the European Economic Community, later the EU, as a staunch supporter of Western integration. The government invested in social housing, healthcare, and education, laying the foundations of a modern welfare state. At the same time, the era of colonial empire ended. The loss of empire prompted economic diversification. Formerly colonial commerce shifted toward global trade and industrial investment. By the 1950s to 1960s, Dutch GDP grew rapidly and living standards improved. Dutch society modernized. Old austerity gave way to consumerism and cultural liberalism. From the 1960s onward, the Netherlands became known for social liberalism. Progressive reforms included legalizing abortion, opening regulated prostitution zones, tolerating soft drugs, and, in 2001, becoming the first country to legalize same-sex marriage. The Polder model of consensus politics guided domestic policy. Economically, the country built a high-tech, diversified economy, leading sectors in chemicals, electronics, agriculture, and services centered on global ports like Rotterdam and Amsterdam's financial sector. Immigration and multiculturalism shaped late 20th century society. Millions came as guest workers, Turks, Moroccans, or from former colonies, Indonesia, Suriname, Antilles, transforming Dutch cities. In the 1990s, the economy prospered, but social tensions also surfaced. In 2002, the populist politician Pim Fortuyn, who campaigned against immigration, was assassinated just before elections. In 2004, filmmaker Theo van Gogh was murdered by an Islamic extremist. The political scene grew more fragmented. Traditional Christian Democrat and Socialist parties remained important, but new parties on the right also gained influence. Internationally, the Netherlands has remained deeply integrated with Europe. It was a founder of the European Communities and later the European Union, the Eurozone, and the Schengen area. In 2005, Dutch voters notably rejected the proposed European Union constitution in a national referendum, signaling a more populist and Eurosceptic turn. In recent years, Dutch governments have balanced fiscal prudence with maintaining a high quality of life. The Netherlands today is a prosperous, highly urbanized country with a strong trade-oriented economy. Its society remains liberal on social issues, but public debates on immigration, the welfare state, and climate policy are vigorous. Despite domestic changes, the Netherlands continues to play an influential role in the European Union and international organizations. Through centuries of war and peace, empire and loss, prosperity and struggle, the Netherlands has continually adapted, rebuilt, and looked outward. Its people engineered land where there was none, built ships that reached the farthest corners of the globe, and fostered ideas that reshaped culture and politics alike. What endures is not just the wealth of its golden age or the scars of its wars, but the spirit of a nation that thrives in the balance between tradition and innovation, land and water, past and future. The Netherlands, once a fragile delta, stands today as a symbol of resilience, proof that even the smallest of nations can leave an immeasurable mark on the world.